Hello, friends. It's Chopped, one of them. And no, it's Hebrew, Aramaic, and Yiddish. Which look like I'm not saying that's not education, but I'm saying if you're going to live in America, I don't think you should kids should be illiterate by the age of 12.
Right. This is the problem you have with Hasids. You have it also with fundamentalist Mormons. You
I was
have it
gonna
with
say, they're the only two groups that have this kind of group just allowed to exist. Like, you look at these kind of like close knit communities, they would be busted up by the police. They would never be allowed to get this far. It's only the Mormons
well, yeah, but you have this problem with like this type of thing, and I'm sure there's an equivalent in like every Western nation to some extent, where like yeah, there is a group where maybe, well, in the case of the fundamentalist Mormons and the Hasids, they are on average, your average guy that you pick out, your average family, they'll probably be lower income than the average, more secular member or more normal member of their sect in the broader nation. But as a group, they have it's like the sack of potatoes, so to speak. They want it both ways always, right? They're saying, no, we're doing this because the secular world is disgusting. We want to maintain our values. Okay, fine. But they also want, 10, 11 figures in fucking government largesses and get them always. Not only that, but they want like a parallel system backed up by the state. They want to have like their own ambulatory services. They want to have their own police. They want to have in this case, their own schools, and they always get them.
they have their
In the
own
case of the Hasids,
service. It's paid for by the city.
yeah, they in the case of the Hasids, they're very involved in local government, which sure, that's everyone's right, but it just I don't know. I mean, I sound like a French person here, but you either have to, if you want to participate in this way, you should acknowledge there are secular values to this thing, or there
Yeah.
should be, or that they're supposed to be. They're sort of enshrined.
You cannot live in a 21st century multicultural democracy. You cannot live in a secular modern society and essentially reap all of the value, all the value and benefit and safety and protection that comes with living in that society, and then demand that you have a right to keep kids in a state of illiteracy.
Right. That is the big rub here. Look, this wouldn't be a thing if it was like the only thing they wanted was to wear coats when it's too hot. Look, I obviously disagree with that, but that's your thing. When it is preventing kids from leaving into the outside world and fucking purposely keeping them from speaking the language of the world around them, behaving in every single way as a fucking abusive cult does, both in this case, in the case of fundamentalist Mormons, and fucking anything else like this you could find in America or elsewhere, then it becomes a problem. When you are being backwards in every single way that people are fucking backwards.
I mean,
I mean,
another detail in this article, outside of just not teaching reading, writing, or basic arithmetic, or basically anything other than just studying the Talmud 12 hours a day. Also, the use of corporal punishment is commonplace in these schools, and there's even a detail about parents bribing teachers not to beat their children, which is okay. Leaving aside, does this count as education? No, you cannot beat kids, even in a private school. You can't do that. It's illegal. Here's an interesting counterexample. Do the Pennsylvania Dutch and Amish communities did they take did they get a lot of money from the state too? I'm asking a question. I don't know the answer to this, but it would be there is another, that's a religious group of people that essentially have removed themselves from modern society. They interact with modern society. They're aware that it exists. They even allow for people to leave if they want. But to the Amish, it seems like they're more dedicated to just kind of doing their own thing. I don't know, but
well, yeah, but
I'm
that's
not.
because they are able to, they're out in they're out in the middle of they got farms, they're not packed up.
Right. I don't really like that either, to be honest with you. It's one thing when you're doing it, when you are bringing children into this world and whatever your intentions are, okay, hypothetically, let's say that the Pennsylvania Dutch don't take any largesses from the state. Let's say they do it perfectly. It's still there's something abusive and backwards about it that I really do not like, and I would like it to not happen. But like, yeah, I mean, the Hasids are a special case because they are, yeah, receiving government money to have a school as would exist in the shtetl, where you're I don't know, taking a tree branch and hitting a fucking kid with it.
There is
I mean,
something though that I think I don't know. I like if you think of it from their point of view though. Okay, the kids should not be doing these, private schools. They should be going to public schools. But like New York public schools aren't that great either. And it's like, yes, obviously there's a lot more actual education happening there, but also there's a degree of deculturalization. Like you're losing, like you're perceived as like the patriarchs of these communities, as somebody who's like, at least we have this community, we have each other, and we would rather hold on to that than get our kids a education that might help them, navigate a world that's also going to fuck them over because there's no carrot to go with the stick of like acceding to the wider culture anymore because the state is no longer capable of presenting any kind of idea of a safety net or a path to upward mobility.
That is the best argument I've heard for them. Maybe you should take over as the PR guy for them, as opposed to the guy who is making those
Oh God,
wonderful
that's the thing.
tweets.
It's like, dude, you guys have a case. What are you doing? You're blowing it here.
That yeah, they I don't know if people saw the tweets, but they were definitely going in house for this one. I will say that those were not written by any PR professional.
Let me just read. I'm going to read from like not Matt's sort of broader defense of the idea of maintaining sort of the boundaries of religious traditionalism within a modern society. This is in the Heritage Foundation guy though. Bedrick. He writes. In truth, the hostility towards yeshivas is not as much grounded in empirical facts as it is in a philosophical worldview. To the elite readers of the New York Times, the primary purpose of education is to convey economically useful skills and politically desired dispositions so that their children can maintain their status in the ruling class. They hold that view without reflection or even awareness that others might think that education should serve different, legitimate purposes. Rather than focusing on the skills that are required to gain status and power, the yeshivas and schools favored by most Americans are focused on developing the character of children so that they grow up to be decent human beings. Okay, I don't think you can have character or have community if you can't read or write. And like I'm
No,
sorry, if the character of I'm sorry, like this is where I like the counter argument to Matt's point is that like if the character of your tradition and community that you're looking to maintain depends on keeping each new generation in a state of complete ignorance about the world, then I don't think it's a community or culture worthy of preserving. That's just how I feel about it.
right? Yeah. Just my two things here. I got to say, Bedrick. That sounds like a guy who makes two appearances in A Song of Ice and Fire. Probably gets crushed to death by the mountains. Second of all, yeah, I saw this pointed to a lot that most Americans support yeshivas. I would love to see just that word brought in front of Americans and see them try to define what that word means.
Shout out to our good friend Dan, who pointed out, I think, one of the most telling details of the story. Basically, like the interesting fact that girls have a better educational outcome in things like arithmetic and basic literacy because so little emphasis is made on educating them within the yeshiva system that they accidentally are just like learn things because nobody's paying attention to what they're doing.
Jesus
Yeah, they don't have
Christ.
to just read the same book over and over again. They have time for other
Oh
shit.
my
But I mean, I guess like the broader question outside of like this, an interesting local story about the complete failure of New York State and city government to, I don't know, manage its, educational system and prevent children from being abused and kept in a state of dangerous ignorance. I guess like the broader question is like, this religious schooling model of which like education in like a fluency in a like modern secular world is it taking the back seat or just completely offboarded for character, community, tradition, to sort of mold kids within a non-secular sort of pre-modern community and tradition, etc. Is this thing with this current Supreme Court, like this is going to become more and more de rigueur? Like, would you guys agree with that? Like, this
Oh
model
yeah.
is one that's going to be introduced as, and like we've talked about this before, but whether it's CRT, whether it's like, gender bathroom panic, or whether it's, like prayer in school and things like that. Like behind all of these, behind all this kind of school choice, behind every one of these issues as like the conservative point of view on education or education system is doing away with public school entirely.
Yes. I think it's going to be creating a tripartite arrangement. There will still be public schools, but they will be functionally prisons. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we all, not in the Foucaultian sense, but like in the literal sense that they will just fuck the school to prison pipeline. It's one room, saves time, saves energy. Then you will have these, yes, like religiously oriented, as a substitute usually for some ethnic orientation, private school networks for like the lower middle class, and then private tutors. The return of the old Greek model for the upper crust.
Oh, I would have loved that.
But to do frottage with Aristotle, like young Alexander.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, teach me whatever. I don't care. I just, yeah,
But-
I just want to, like, between the thighs, maybe.
yes, yes.
That's the way they
Yeah.
did it. That's how they rolled.
Yeah, if I had started doing front squats earlier, I think I could have had like a gorilla gripper. Quadriceps.
You could have been you could have been milking Play-Doh like a goddamn cow.
Yeah, I would have been like the superhead of the tutor system. Been well known, passed around by all the best.
Oh, Jesus.
But I it's weird, right? I think that since Dobbs, and it's not just about abortion necessarily, but I think that there has been a sort of realization of a silent majority of people who wouldn't necessarily describe themselves as socially liberal, but are sick of like a social conservative overreach, right? And that in the best case scenario, there is like a broad depolarization in some aspects that's against like, all the goofy shit, all the like 11-year-olds have to give birth. We're going to ruin every fucking parent teacher conference, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't fully bet on the best outcome really ever, but I would say even if that does happen, you're still going to have the 20% of America that's for the foreseeable future always going to be there and always going to be saying like, no, we do want 11-year-olds to give birth. They will go further and further into their into things like this, as Matt said. I think we'll probably see like a parochial version of like QAnon schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
study
where
the
they
drops.
teach you the proofs. Oh God. It's like we don't need the Bible. We have the proofs now. The next the refinement of the Bible into like action items for life and how to map reality.
And I mean, like, I think there's a reason why, like, education is increasingly becoming more and more of like a culture war battleground, or I guess like it always is, because there's a certain truth in like, like the if,
Who
like,
is
the
making
majority of
reality?
kids,
Is it private
like,
or is it some sort of public project?
yeah,
There used
exactly.
to be one, but it's gone now. There's no more public consensus reality for people to feel like they can put their children's mind into and feel like they're going to get anything back in return. The faith in the systems has collapsed.
I mean, I could see like another like as we fully enter the second dark age, and like like the decline of education and literacy being like a huge feature of this, is like as we've seen now with COVID, with like remote learning. Like I think it'll just be like it'll be like a sort of pay per session where like you're in a Zoom call with like 6,000 kids, and then like there's just like a TED
Yeah,
talk.
well,
Like,
that's the thing is
beginning.
that'll
And, like,
be
that's how you
it's all
get
going to be
credits.
striated, right? So like you're going to have for the kids who fall out of control, basically, you're going to get the containment units, and then for people who are just like working class, sending their kids, like the kids who actually are going to go to school, they're going to go to these like big public schools. The first row of it will be the non-existent, non-real teach from home concept, right? Like the thing that we know doesn't work and that does not actually educate kids. That is what is going to be the standard. And then, of course, those kids are going to have to go out into the world and they're going to fucking fall on their asses, but it won't matter because they technically will have been offered an education. But then, like in places where there's still real estate value in urban areas, they're going to be able to sustain like networks of high quality private education.
Yeah.
But if you have any real money, you're just going to hire somebody to live in your house and teach your kid. And then
Well,
that
like
is going to
at
stand
the
in like, that is going to be like, who you get to do that is gonna replace, like, what school they would have gotten into, in getting them
well,
into, the even more, refined little academies that, are gonna exist to, like, certify them as part of the new elite.
but don't you think at the highest tier though, like it'll be like the traditional private school experience? Like, do you think like the children of the ultra elite or their parents will want their kid A in the house 24/7 and B not getting a social education, like not
Yeah.
interacting
No, at
with
the very
peers
top, it
or
goes back
parties
to
or
being,
proms and
like, the ideal
sports
education that
teams and
that
shit?
they that the mid-century dream was every kid was gonna get, right? Like, that chance to live that, like, unalienated life of the mind, that, was the promise of, like, mid-century prosperity, and now it's going to once again be, only the province of the ultra elite with no, hope of anybody else getting in there.
Here's a broader question, and I ask this, full disclosure with full hypocrisy, defenses on as a lifelong child of private education. Should there be private schools in America? Should private
No, of course
education be a
not.
thing?
But again, like, we don't would you want this state to take over education right now?
What,
It's
New
like
York State?
the capacity doesn't exist, you know? But, like, you'd hope to build it in the process of, like, defending public education. Like, a public education has to actually absolutely be defended, with the end goal being have a state capable of extinguishing private education as a concept.